What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and welcome to another episode of our First Down Training show. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the dumbest rules in high school football in regards to transferring high school. So if you're an athlete who has transferred, maybe thinking about transferring, plan on transferring, this is a must-watch video for you because we're going to talk about some of the things you want to be aware of and some of the dumbest rules in regards to transferring. Then, we're going to be talking about some current events. We're going to talk about a recent speech that Peyton Manning gave to a college team, and then we're going to be going over some questions that you guys left on a previous episode of this show. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. Let's get started. So obviously in college football today, everybody loves to talk about and harp on like the transfer portal, right? Oh, this guy entered the portal. This guy left his team early during like a bowl game to go transfer to another school because they were going to be paying him a grip of money, right? Now, obviously in high school, it's not that crazy, but where I live in Southern California, and I'm assuming the big football markets like California, Texas, Florida, Georgia, and probably many other states, transferring is getting a little bit out of hand. It's getting a little bit crazy. And I think a lot of schools are to blame for this, but I also think that some of the leagues, like where I live in Southern California, it's called CIF, which is like a California, like I guess you could say like high school regulation body. I think they're super corrupt. I don't really think they serve much of a purpose, if I'm being honest with you. I'm sure they do some good, but I really think that the whole transfer process is completely flawed. And I want to explain to you at least where I think it's flawed and some maybe things that you could think about if you plan on transferring, have transferred, and if this type of stuff has happened to you, right? So first things first, I think having to sit out games for your first transfer is completely BS. That's at least how it works here in California, right? So like, let's say, for example, you go to a public school, right? The city that I live in is called Los Alamitos, right? Very, very small city. There's only one high school in this city, but the people that are zoned for Los Alamitos High School strictly live in that like district, which is like Los Alamitos, the city. There's like a kind of a sub-city in there called Rossmore. Like if you live in that area, you're zoned to go to Los Al. So let's say you're an athlete who lives in that area, you go to that school. Let's say it's not working out. Let's say it's not working out. Maybe it's school-wise, like education-wise. Maybe you're not getting along with classmates, or maybe you're not getting a lot of playtime. And some parents, some people are very, very anti-transferring for sports reasons. I was a guy that transferred for sports reasons. I went to a private high school, and it's called Servite High School. Some of you might be familiar with it. They play like the bigger, they're in that like league called the Trinity League out here in California. They play some of the bigger schools like Mater Dei, St. John Bosco, teams of that caliber, right? They say it's one of the most competitive leagues in California. So I was a freshman there, and there were probably 4 other quarterbacks on our team. I was lucky enough to be one of the starters on the team, right? I split time with another kid. And then in the sophomore class, there was a kid who had an offer to like Oregon, an offer at the time. But he was, you could tell he was a college level player, 6'5", could throw the hell out of the ball, right? And he had just transferred in from St. John Bosco. Then we had a junior quarterback who was pretty good, and then we had a senior quarterback who was actually committed to Oregon. So we had all kinds of quarterbacks. I knew that I probably wasn't going to play at best till my senior year, and I was going to have to compete with another kid or another transfer that was going to come in. So I decided to transfer schools. Also, the reason why I transferred schools was because my mom was doing like a 2-hour commute every day, driving from work to get me to school, driving back, and Servite was far from where I lived, right? So I was a transfer kid, so I get what a lot of you guys are going through, and I think transferring for sports is a totally viable option if you're passionate about sports and that's what you ultimately want to pursue. A lot of families are very education-oriented. You're in a situation, you need to deal with it, you need to learn how to work through stuff, you need to learn how to compete, and that's totally fine, right? I get that. I was a quarterback, and I transferred because there can only be one quarterback. It's a very unique position. It's a lot like a kicker. There can only be one kicker on the team. It's not like receiver where there's 3 or 4 guys who can start. I'm a firm believer that I don't feel receivers, linemen, linebackers should be transferring willy-nilly just because like there are multiple spots on the field. Like you could play as, like, if you're not starting left guard, you go play right guard. You're a center, but you're behind a dude, you go play left guard, you play right guard. So I feel like there are opportunities where a lot of guys run from competition. So I'm not trying to tell you to run from competition, but if it's time to go, it's time to go in terms of what school you're transferring to. Now, I know me personally, because I didn't live in that Los Al district, and I wasn't going to use a fake address, because at that time, it's a little bit different now, but that Los Alamitos High School that I transferred to wasn't really, they were very by the book. They were kind of old school, right? Nowadays, what high schools will do is they'll use a fake address, give you some random address, and let you be on the team so you don't have to sit out 5 games. That's what I think is insanely dumb about transferring high schools. Because if you transfer to a school, you got to sit out 5 games. That might hurt your eligibility. That might hurt your recruiting process. Like, I thought high school was about getting athletes ready for the next level. I thought high school is like, whether that's like, you're a student, we're preparing you to go be a college student. Whether that's in athletics, we're preparing you to be a college level football football player, basketball player, baseball player, whatever the case may be, right? I thought that's what high school was about. But when you have these kids and they transfer to school and then they got to sit out 5 games, that's half the season. Some states is a little different. I've heard of some states where if they transfer and they don't move, which essentially means faking an address, because not many families have the luxury of just upping and moving their whole life or putting little Johnny up in an apartment. Like, I've heard some people do that too, which is crazy. You got to have a ton of money to be willing to do that, but some people do that, right? So I think it's ridiculous, because if you make that kid sit out, he's only got 5 games to make an impression that season on a college coach. Let's say he's a junior in high school. That's a very important year for recruiting. You transfer, you got to sit out 5. You only got 5 games. Maybe you don't make a ton of plays in those 5 games. Maybe you only get 30 seconds worth of explosive plays that could stand you out to a college coach, and college coach is going to want to see more. But if you're trying to play at a high level of college football, they generally want to see 2 to 3 years of film, or they want to know that you're a starter for at least 2 to 3 years, especially with how competitive college football is nowadays. Because we talked about in the very beginning of this video, we talked about the transfer portal. Colleges can not only recruit from other schools, they can not only recruit from junior college players, and now then high school. And high school kind of comes third, especially with the bounce back rules that they have in JUCO. If you're a D1 level guy, you go to a JUCO, you still have eligibility at the D1 level. You don't lose those 2 years that you play at the junior college level. I've heard that they might be reversing that rule, but still in the conditions today, that is the rule. So it's honestly a little bit ridiculous. Now, I was talking to somebody earlier today on a podcast, and they were talking about how in the state of New Jersey, they were allowing athletes to transfer one time free and clear. And I really believe every single state should adopt that principle. Now, there's a right and wrong way to go about transferring. We're going to talk about transferring and how you should approach it as an athlete here in a second. There's a right and wrong way, because a lot of athletes go about it the very wrong way. They transfer to a school thinking that they're the dude, thinking that they're the guy, they're going to walk right in and play. That's not always how it goes, right? But what I will say is everybody should be able to transfer free and clear. Now, here's what some people will say to me. Well, what about those kids that just rig the system? They transfer to this school, they get film, they go transfer to another school, they get film, they transfer to this school, and they go to 4 schools in 4 years. That's a little bit absurd. And I think there needs to be rules and regulations around that. And I think these rules and regulations would get rid of the cheating. I think it's ridiculous that athletes have to fake an address. There have been teams out here in Southern California, like a popular one, St. John Bosco, a couple years, like I would say maybe 10 years ago. I think it's been 10 years. That's crazy. But maybe 10 years ago, they had to forfeit all of their league games because they had an address debacle where a guy was saying that he was living in a certain place where he actually wasn't, and then there was a problem, and then they had to forfeit games. They ended up winning the state championship that year, which is crazy in itself, but you look at their record and you're like, man, they went 0-5 in league. No, those are forfeits because they were cheating, right? It's essentially cheating. You're trying to rig the system because the system itself is flawed. So I don't even necessarily blame the schools, I blame the system. So I really believe you should get one transfer free and clear. Transfer wherever you want to go. Anywhere. It could be an hour away from your house. That is your prerogative. I think that's just a freedom thing. If I'm being totally honest with you, also people talk about this a lot in the political world, how, students who live in lower income areas may not have access to really high level academic schools, right? And so they're like, oh, well, they should be able to go wherever they want to go. I think that's great. I think that's super important. So you get some kid who's in a bad situation, in a bad school, bad educational environment, relate that to sports. He's in a bad sports environment, a coach that maybe doesn't do a lot of recruiting. He wants to go play college football somewhere. He should be able to transfer one time. Then me personally, I think if you want to transfer a second time, you should have to sit out. You should have to sit out 5 because I think 2 transfers is a lot. Because if you can't figure it out at one school and then the same thing happens at another school, that's a problem, right? So I think if it's transfer a second time, you should maybe have to sit out 5. Then I think it should be illegal, or you have to sit out a full season if you want to transfer a 3rd or a 4th time. Now, that's what I was talking to somebody about on a podcast. They were saying that if a senior in high school wants to transfer for his last year, that actually is illegal. You're not allowed to do that. I kind of like that rule, but I think this whole transfer, at least at the high school level, at the college level, I'd actually be a fan of the same system. You should be able to enter the portal one time, but if you enter the portal a second time, you should be able to get a penalty, because that's going to prevent people at the college level going from school to school, going for the money. It takes away that element that we all, I think, can agree that we hate about NIL. I haven't met one person, not one person, who thinks the athlete transferring from 3 different schools in his collegiate career just to chase money thinks it's a good idea. Am I blaming the kid? No. If somebody offered me $1 million to go play for their school and leave the school that I just transferred to, I'd probably consider it. You know what I mean? Because a lot of those kids have never seen that kind of money or don't even know what kind of money that is. So I get it. I understand why they do it, but there needs to be rules in place for the transfer process. Now, what's the right and wrong way to go about transferring? Now, We'll discuss that, but before we get into that, fellas, if you're a quarterback or wide receiver watching this and you would like to train with myself and my staff of coaches this offseason, we are going to be traveling out to 15 different cities all across the U.S. for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camps. So guys, if you want some more information on that, go to that very first link in the description below. That is where you can sign up. Next city that we're coming out to is San Francisco, California. Then we'll be coming out to Orlando, Florida, Phoenix, Arizona, Columbia, South Carolina, Seattle, Washington, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Nashville, Tennessee. After that, we will be coming out to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Austin, Texas, Atlanta, Georgia, Denver, Colorado. Then after Denver, we'll be coming out to Columbus, Ohio, Boston, Massachusetts, Salt Lake City, Utah, and finishing it off in Los Angeles, California. So guys, you want some more information, you want to sign up, go to that very first link in the description below. That is where you can get all the information. Now, with that being said, guys, like seriously, our camps, they're very exclusive. We don't accept everybody. We limit the amount of spots that we take so we can work with each of you individually. We just started promoting our camps and spots are starting to fill up, and they're starting to fill up fast. So guys, make sure you take advantage of the fact that we have open spots and availability. Go to that very first link in the description below. We'd love to see you out there. So let's talk about the right and wrong way to transfer, and then we'll get into some current events and answer your guys' questions. We seriously, guys, I really appreciate the support that you guys have been giving on these episodes. These are by far our favorite YouTube videos to make, favorite stuff to talk about, these topics that not a lot of people are willing to talk about in the football world and in the football space. So we are glad that you guys are enjoying these videos. So seriously, if you guys have questions, comments, whatever, post them in the chat below or post them in the comment section below, and we'd be happy to feature you on the next episode of our show. So, right and wrong way to go about transferring. If you're going to transfer schools, you need to be absolutely sure that you're just getting a fair opportunity to compete. A lot of people will give the advice that like, hey, if you're going to transfer schools, you need to be absolutely sure that you're going to start. You don't want to waste another year. There are no guarantees in football. There are no guarantees in life. You may transfer in and another kid may transfer in at the exact same time. There are no guarantees. All you want is to try to get to a program that is merit-based. A lot of people feel the need to transfer because they feel like they're not getting a fair shake. They feel like they're not getting a fair opportunity. They feel like they're kind of getting, blackballed in a sense, or maybe there's like daddy ball going on or favoritism. And we've talked about this in previous episodes of the show where like maybe that's not always the case. Maybe you're just not good enough. And I feel like people need to be more honest with themselves, I think in every aspect of life. But at the same time, if you feel like that's your situation, it's time to go. You need to make sure that you're contacting the coach, the OC, the position coach, whatever, and just listen, hey, I plan on coming to your school. I want to transfer. I'm not asking for any special treatment. I'm not asking for any favors. I just want an opportunity to compete. And they can give you that guarantee. No coach is going to say that you're not going to have an opportunity to compete, but look at the history of the program. Is the head coach, is his son at your position? Is the position coach's son at your position? Find this information out before you make the decision to transfer, and try to keep that information quiet, because if you do end up staying at the school that you're at, you don't want your coaches to find out that you were thinking about leaving, because that's going to hurt the relationship that you have with them. Now, when you get there, you cannot be entitled. If you transfer to a school, and you make that transfer, whether you fake an address or not, you're there. You need to make sure that you are about earning it. Because here's the thing that I experienced as a player because I transferred from a private school that was Division I to a Division III level public school. And in California, Division III football is outstanding. A lot of talented players from every single school at the Division III level will go play D1 ball. So it wasn't a big drop in competition. But I got this advice from somebody. They were like, hey dude, like don't come in there with this attitude like, oh, I'm a private school guy. I played in the Trinity League. I'm much better. Because like guys generally don't transfer to a school that's better. They transfer, either they make a lateral move in skill level, or they move down so they could get more play time or have an easier time to play, or a fair shake. That's generally how it goes. If you transfer up, you're rare. You're the 1%, if you will, right? So when you get there, you can't have that attitude that you're better than the guys there, because everybody on that team, they might be excited that you're transferring in, but you have a stigma of, oh, this guy doesn't think we're that good. That's why he's transferring here, because he feels like he's going to be just walking the park. You can't have that attitude, you guys. We're going to talk a little bit about attitude and leadership with this speech that Peyton Manning gave here in a second, but I'm telling you, that you have a target on your back. Everybody's gunning for your spot. Everybody's trying to prove that they are better than you. And how you diffuse all that is just by being a good teammate and being about the work. You get there day one, you shouldn't be that guy that's just like, man, like at my old school, we did this or this. No, buy into the program, buy into what the coaches are doing, show up every day in the weight room, show up every day at practice, and give your absolute best, because that's going to win the team over and you're going to have a much smoother transition. And it's going to win the coaching staff over, because the coaching staff feels the exact same way, especially if they weren't guys that recruited you to get there. You just transferred on your own free will. So just make sure you have that attitude if you plan on transferring, or if you ever do transfer, remember this advice, you guys, because the system is flawed in a whole, but as an athlete, you have to control what you can control. And the only two things that you can control in any aspect of life are your actions and your attitude, and generally just like the way you are thinking. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about the transfer process at the high school level. Now, fellas, let's get into a current event. So I thought this was pretty cool. This was a speech delivered by Peyton Manning to Notre Dame, and he says, speaks to young athletes on leadership. It's not just about you. Play for your teammates. The best players practice the hardest. When you compete with each other, it's contagious. A must watch. Guys, he couldn't have said it any better. And then when it's coming from Peyton Manning, that's obviously carries a lot of weight, because Peyton Manning's Peyton Manning. We all know him. We all love him. Here's the key that I want you guys to understand about that message is when it comes to leadership, guys, people don't care how good you are. People don't care how much you know until they know that you care. And I know that sounds cliche, and you read that in every single self-help book. But at the end of the day, if you're in a leadership role on your team, quarterback, linebacker, upperclassman, you need to take the time to get to know your teammates on a personal level. Get to have relationships with them away from the football field, have relationships with them on the football field where you're not always talking about football, to build that camaraderie. And if you want to be a leader of the team, you might be the best guy ever, but if you're lazy in practice, they probably won't look at you as a leader. They'll think of you as a good dude, but you're not a leader. If you want to be a leader on your team, you need to have those personal relationships, and you need to back it up with your work ethic on the field, work ethic in the gym, work ethic in the classroom, because they're going to look at you and say, man, that's one of my good friends. I know we have a good relationship, and he's doing this. I can do that. And that's how you motivate a group of people. You have to lead from the front, but you also have to get to know them on a personal level, have that personal relationship so they can buy into your actions. Because every great leader, I feel, is able to lead by example rather than just telling people what to do. Okay, so I feel a lot of athletes need to hear that, especially this time of year. Okay, so now, fellas, we are going to get into some of your guys' questions that you guys left on a previous episode of this show. So seriously, we appreciate all the support. We appreciate you guys engaging with this. So again, if you guys have questions, comments, don't hesitate. Post them in the comment section below, you guys, and we will feature you on the next episode of our show if we feel like it's a good quality question, okay? So, question number 1 here from Dawson the QB. What's the best QB cleats for a dual threat quarterback? So, when it comes to a dual threat quarterback, skill position player, the best cleats that I could recommend are 2 brands. Adizero cleats, I think those are great. I think they're great because they're obviously extremely light. They're more comfortable than people give credit, so those are good. Also, there's a brand called Caddix, Caddix. They have this technology on the stud of the cleat that helps with knee injuries. When you cut, especially on turf, it doesn't send that jolt up your knee. I have a pair. I love wearing them. They don't pay me any money. They don't pay me to say this type of stuff. I just think it's a great cleat for athletes. So those are the 2 brands I definitely recommend. So I appreciate you asking that, man. Thanks for the consistent support. Next question from Andrew the Cool Jock. Can you make a video on how to properly block as a wide receiver? Yeah, man. So when it comes to blocking as a receiver, there's really 3 things you want to take into consideration. Number 1, you want to address the DB under control, but you want to have your feet active. So like when you address him under control, that's so he doesn't give a quick move and just run around you. Then that second point, like I mentioned, keep your feet active. You should be taking 6-inch steps, and when you get hands on the guy, you need to make sure, tip number 3, you stay square. A lot of times receivers get called for holding because their feet die and their base maybe gets too narrow. Guy gets around them, they're hanging on, and that's when the holding gets called. You want to keep your chest, your shoulders, and your hips, the square right here, squared up with the defender so you could stay in front of him and not get called for a holding penalty. Okay, so I hope that makes sense, man. I appreciate you asking that. Next question here from JT McCrary. Hey, coach, I'm a sophomore lineman, primary playing center. I have a skill set to be on the interior D-line, but I'm not getting reps as coaches don't like players going 2 ways. I'm starting at center. My backup skill gap is far behind. How can I convince my coaches to give me D-line reps in team period? So if you want to switch positions or also play both ways, there's really one way to go about it with your coach. If you just go to your coach and you just say, hey, I want to switch positions, like, I want to play defense. He's probably not going to take that too kindly because it seems like you're telling him what to do and it's all about you. Make it about the team and make it about earning it. This is exactly what I would say to your coach. Hey, coach, I feel like I could help the team playing defensive line as well. I was wondering what you need to see from me to earn an opportunity to try defensive line, to try DB, to try receiver, whatever position that you were trying to switch to. Because if you make it about earning it, he's going to tell you, hey, you need to improve in XYZ area. If you make it about the team, he knows that you're not just acting selfishly like, I want to play both ways, I want to be the star. So that's exactly what I would say. And if you approach it that way, I think any coach would be pleased with that conversation, okay? So I hope that helps, man. Now, fellas, guys, appreciate everybody tuning in. That does it for this episode of our show, but I hope this was able to help. Hope this was able to give you guys some valuable insights on the transfer process and answering all these questions that we talked about. Hopefully it was able to help. So guys, appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next time.